people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. A tweet from Camille Stefan from Eye of the Tiger Management, Eye of the Tiger, that promotes unbeaten up-and-comer and amateur standout of Canada, Mary Spencer. Mary, who's going to be in action at least one more time before this year is out against Herman. It's official. The winner of that fight becomes the mandatory challenger for Natasha Jonas. Natasha, who's going to be in action this weekend against her fellow champion, Marie-Eve Dicaire. We knew this was coming, and I anticipate that Natasha Jonas will win this weekend. If and when she emerges the victor, she will be in possession of 3 of the 4 major titles at this weight, the green belt, the WBC title being one among them. And it just so happens that the winner of Mary Spencer versus Femke Hermans will be the mandatory challenger for that green belt. And I anticipate that Mary Spencer, not only is she going to win that fight, she's going to knock out Femke Hermans. In any event, so long as she wins, she becomes Natasha Jonas's problem. Mary Spencer and the people over there at Eye of the Tiger Management are doing a good job of closing off all exits to the remaining champions at junior middleweight. By way of the WBA, they hold a lesser title, moving them towards reigning WBA champion, newly crowned Terry Harper, and we see what's going on by way of the WBC. At this time, Mary Spencer is a high-risk, low-reward opponent for both of those champions. Perhaps one of those fights is a bit more attractive to Mary Spencer and people over there at Eye of the Tiger Management. Perhaps one of those fights might be more attractive than the other. I would assume it's the winner of Jonas versus Dicaire, because the winner of the fight will have 3 alphabet titles as opposed to just 1. I think for Mary, it could prove difficult cornering a fight with either Natasha Jonas or Terry Harper. Both of those fights could prove to be quite elusive, but I think that if Mary and the people at Eye of the Tiger Management had to choose which champion they want to get in the ring more than the other, I think they'd go for the champion that has the most belts, and that would presumably be the winner of Jonas versus Dicaire. Which could hamper their efforts to do an undisputed fight between them, an undisputed title fight between Natasha Jonas and Terry Harper. I don't even know that those talks have gotten off the ground. Terry Harper just won that WBA title. So when the winner of Spencer versus Hermans emerges, whoever it is, and I assume it will be Mary, she'll be the mandatory challenger by way of the WBC. The question then becomes, how long before the WBC order that fight between Mary, what I assume will be Mary, and the winner of Jonas versus Dicaire, who I assume will be Natasha Jonas. Are they going to be Johnny on the spot with this thing, or are they at least going to give the champions some time to make a fight amongst themselves? Because I got to tell you, a rematch between them for all the marbles, for all the belts, given the aesthetic of the first match, that it was a crowd pleaser, that some people scored it for Natasha, and some people, they scored it for Terry. Some people felt that the draw was just. I was among those people. I scored it 5 rounds to 5, even rounds for both fighters, both combatants. A rematch is warranted, more so now that the both of them are reigning champions, and a second fight for all the marbles really would be a high-profile fight, one of the bigger high-profile fights this division has seen in recent memory, a fight with an even bigger profile than Clarissa Shields' undisputed title fight with Marie-Eve Dicaire well over a year ago. Not all undisputed title fights are created equal. Comparatively, the profile of Shields versus Dicaire in America to the potential profile of Jonas versus Harper 2 in the United Kingdom, comparatively, Jonas versus Harper 2 would likely be fought on a bigger stage and have a bigger profile, a much bigger profile than Shields versus Dicaire. It's not a knock on anybody, it's just the way it is. Yeah, just being honest.
Jonas versus Harper 2 in the United Kingdom could likely generate more interest and thereby generate more money than Shields versus Dicaire did here in America.
And Clarissa Shields fought Marie-Eve Dicaire here in the United States for the undisputed junior middleweight crown. The fight took place behind an obscure pay-per-view platform, the then obscure Fight TV, which most fight fans really weren't familiar with. Even now, many of them are just now starting to catch on.
Whereas Natasha Jonas versus Terry Harper, that could take place on either the DAZN platform, which many fight fans are already familiar with globally, or Sky Sports, very big network in the United Kingdom. It would be a bigger stage.
Sky Sports is a well-established network over there. You do this fight on that network, believe you me, you're going to drum up interest. You're going to drum up business. It's going to draw eyes to the fight. Enough eyes that, you know what?
What?
Maybe they should hold off on ordering any mandatories for either of these champions at this time to leave the way clear for this fight, this rematch.
I've been saying it. If they want to bring this second fight into fruition, if they really want to do this, they need to get on it now.
They do. If it's their aim to bring this rematch into fruition, they need to get on this ASAP. Shortly after Natasha Jonas emerges the victor this weekend, if she does.
No time to be pussyfooting around. I've been telling you guys for weeks. I've been telling you guys for months. Mary is coming.
Just crash that party, that world title picture.
It's only a matter of time before she does. That time is almost here.
In men's bantam and super bantamweight news, reigning unified super bantamweight champion Stephen Fulton said on Inoue, if you take away that power, would you still consider him as good?
Well, for starters, why would we take away his power? Why would we need to handicap him?
If we're going to evaluate this guy for what he does and who he is, then why would we handicap him?
Stephen Fulton was quoted as saying, he's good, but I wouldn't say he's the best in the world. Inoue's next opportunity to impress will come at the tail end of the year when he faces WBO bantamweight champion Paul Butler.
For what is the undisputed bantamweight champion of the world, it's my understanding that the bantamweight division has not seen an undisputed champion crowned in some decades. It's my understanding that in the four-belt era, there hasn't been an undisputed champion. Inoue would be the first.
Meanwhile, Stephen Fulton is now looking at a move in weight, 4 pounds north to the featherweight division for a rematch with Brandon Figueroa.
What the hell's he fighting Brandon Figueroa again for?
On Thursday, the 28-year-old received approval to face Figueroa for the WBC's interim title.
So let me see if I understand this. At a time when Inoue has not yet moved up in weight, he hasn't even moved up from bantam up to super bantam, Stephen Fulton appears to be making his exit. He seems to be exiting the super bantamweight division and preparing for a move upstairs up to featherweight. So if by chance the long-awaited, long-anticipated Inoue versus Fulton fight doesn't happen,
don't blame Naoya Inoue for that shit.
It's not his fault. He's just doing at bantamweight what Stephen Fulton claimed he was going to do at super bantamweight, where Inoue is on the verge of becoming his division's undisputed champion. I don't know what effort, if any, Stephen Fulton and his team made to do the same thing up there at 122 pounds.
Stephen Fulton was quoted as saying, he is good, but if you take away that power, would you still consider him as good?
Well, that depends. If we take away your speed, reflexes, and athleticism, would you still be considered as good? I mean, if we're going to handicap him, the same should apply to you.
Don't start coming up with all sorts of special rules and circumstances and handicaps to belittle and marginalize this guy. If you're going to handicap him, the pendulum should swing both ways.
You're going to handicap him? Whatever special physical gifts he might have, then the same should apply to you in some way, shape, or form.
I'd be lying to you if I said I was surprised that Stephen Fulton is moving up in weight long before that Inoue fight got to materialize. I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't see this coming, because I told you here on the channel, I told you.
The fight between Naoya Inoue and Stephen Fulton isn't going to happen. No matter how much enthusiasm or how much interest Stephen Fulton might express publicly, behind closed doors, no effort is being made to see the fight come into fruition. The same way no effort was made to see the MJ Akhmadaliev undisputed super bantamweight fight come into fruition. It's all just talk.
I gave Stephen Fulton the benefit of the doubt. I held off on any criticisms I could have levied. I gave him a chance.
I did, but the timing of this news, the timing of this revelation that for some reason, Stephen Fulton is now moving up to featherweight to fight a guy that he already beat for a second time for a lesser version of a WBC title than the version of the title he currently holds at 122 pounds. He holds the full title at 122 pounds. He's moving up in weight to fight for an interim version.
And he's doing it at a time where Naoya Inoue is just one fight away from moving upstairs to 122.
Just one fight away. He's not going to stay at 118 pounds beyond the Paul Butler fight.
I told you the real significance of that fight. It's not just the prestige of becoming the bantamweight division's first undisputed champion in the four-belt era. That's not the only reason.
Not the only virtue of that fight. In collecting Paul Butler's brown belt, his WBO title, Naoya Inoue will see himself crowned a WBO super champion that can move up in weight as the mandatory challenger to the champion upstairs, which just so happens to be Stephen Fulton.
The super bantamweight division's WBO champion. And you notice that all of a sudden, Stephen Fulton is leaving super bantamweight. He's going up to featherweight.
At a time when that Naoya Inoue fight is a lot closer than it ever was before. At a time when Naoya Inoue is basically just one fight away, just one, from moving upstairs and taking on that division's WBO champion as their mandatory.
By way of the WBO. Now, Stephen might vacate one or both alphabet titles that he holds at super bantamweight. If he's staying up there at featherweight, he'll likely vacate both titles.
Both the WBC and the WBO, both the green belt and the brown one, if he plans on staying upstairs at featherweight. If he doesn't,
if he's still got that brown belt by the time Naoya Inoue gets up there, Naoya Inoue becomes his mandatory challenger, at which point it's either fight or flight. You're either going to fight to defend your title against this guy, or you're going to relinquish it. Surrender it! My honest opinion, Stephen Fulton and Naoya Inoue are not going to fight. By the time Inoue splatters Paul Butler and decides to move up in weight, once that fight is over, next year, at some point next year, by that time, Stephen Fulton may have already vacated the WBO title, at which point, Top Rank will set up a fight between Inoue and the next highest ranked contender at 122 for the newly vacated brown belt. That's what'll happen. And if Naoya Inoue sees himself crowned a four-division champion, his focus, his attention will then turn to cornering the only other champion at that weight, MJ Akhmadaliev.
We'll finish the job that Stephen Fulton left behind, because to my knowledge, Stephen Fulton never actually made any effort to get MJ Akhmadaliev in the ring for an undisputed super bantamweight title fight. He didn't. What's he doing now? He's moving up in weight.
That's what I always told you, and this was always the way it was going to be.
This is the part of the story where Stephen Fulton, without having fought Naoya Inoue, making no effort to do so, tries to shade him as a fighter because he knows what's coming.
He's known all along he was never going to fight this guy.
Finally, in men's super middleweight news, Oscar De La Hoya on David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. If Canelo knocked him out, then Benavidez will destroy him.
This fight has gotten a lot of positive reactions in the boxing world.
But I can't fight this feeling that there are some people waiting to give David more credit for beating the same guy that Canelo knocked out last year.
Oscar De La Hoya says he loves the fight.
He spoke to Fight Hub TV saying, "It's a great fight. It's a beautiful fight. Styles make fights. I'm a huge fan of Benavidez, and Plant has a beautiful style. But I'll believe it when I see it."
The age-old matchup, the boxer versus the puncher, with Caleb Plant being the boxer and David Benavidez being the puncher. Caleb Plant would be, by far and wide, the best name on David Benavidez's resume.
So what does it say about Canelo Alvarez as a fighter? What does it say about Canelo Alvarez's resume? That he's already been there and done that with this same guy back when he was an unbeaten fighter, an unbeaten champion. What does it say about Canelo?
A lot of people out there, they don't seem to want to give Canelo Alvarez credit for knocking out this same guy, but I guarantee you, if David goes in there and does the same thing after him, they'll be saying David's the best thing since sliced bread.
For knocking out the same guy well after Canelo Alvarez did it.
Even though if David and his promoter really wanted to, they could have got their paws on that guy fight.
They could have. I've spent no shortage of time here on the channel reminding people of that. Oscar went on to say, well, just based off what Canelo did to Plant, I've always said that Benavidez is probably the top dog at 168. The fact that he has a relentless style, the fact that he's young...
Top dog for beating who? Top dog.
That is neither proven nor earned. But De La Hoya continued, it's going to be one of those tactical fights from Plant. He has a beautiful style, but ultimately, I think Benavidez can just keep on and walk him down. The youth and the power and the strength is going to ultimately win that fight. If Canelo knocked him out, then Benavidez will destroy him. And he better, because he has that expectation to live up to.
It's gotta be less than convincing that you're some sort of fucking Mexican monster if you go in there and languish with this guy after Canelo stopped him.
They're looking at March for this thing, the tail end of the first quarter of next year, 3 months into 2023. That's when they want to do it.
They want to do it in March. And per the WBC's convention, the winner of the fight becomes the WBC's mandatory challenger for Canelo Alvarez.
It's a very interesting situation. Would the WBC, beyond that fight set to go down in March, would they really put Canelo Alvarez on the spot?
Do you remember what happened when they did that back when he was at middleweight? Back when they ordered him to fight Gennady Golovkin. He told them they can take their green belt and they can shove it.
They've spent enough time with their noses buried in his ass trying to smooth things over.
Trying to make it right, trying to make it nice.
They've been kissing up to that guy ever since, so you really have to wonder, on the heels of this news, would they really gamble putting Canelo Alvarez on the spot to adhere to one of their deadlines for a second time?
That's going to be interesting.
And for my money, Canelo Alvarez is better off staying at 168 pounds and reigning as that division's undisputed champion than attempting to return to light heavyweight to avenge the loss to Dimitri Bivol. I'm sorry to say, but great fighter that Canelo Alvarez might be, he just ain't got it for that guy. Style-wise, Dimitri has an advantage, and size-wise, he does as well.
He's got a very pesky style, and I didn't all of a sudden start saying that after the fight. Ahead of the fight, I told you, right here on this channel, the guy that stands the best chance of beating Canelo Alvarez is Dimitri Bivol. That's the potential banana skin, not these underachievers.
If David Benavidez lives up to Oscar De La Hoya's expectations, and the expectations of some others, those who are expecting him to demolish Caleb Plant, if he does this...
You know what I think? I think Canelo Alvarez is better off fighting that guy because David Benavidez, aside from being a very big super middleweight, there's not much else to him, you know.
You got those highlight reel shoe shines he's getting off on stationary targets and guys who don't fight on the balls of their feet. It's easy to look like a Mexican monster when you've been fighting the kind of guys that David Benavidez has been fighting. And while the Caleb Plant fight is a more interesting fight with a more interesting fighter than those fighters were, at the end of the day, it's just a litmus test.
Stylistically, Canelo Alvarez would have an easier time making David miss and making him pay than attempting to win a points decision over Dimitri Bivol of Weiss. Trying to knock him out. He's not going to knock out a guy like that.
Bigger men than Canelo Alvarez have tried and come up short. Put simply, I don't think he has it for Dimitri, but David's been coasting on easy street for years.
What do? You wait good up until Canelo Alvarez knocks this guy out to find time to fight him. You could have fought him before Canelo got his hands on him, but you didn't.
So what I think is that Canelo Alvarez should give this kid what he wants. Give him what he wants. Give him that fight. If he goes in there and knocks out Caleb Plant, regardless of how, he should fight David Benavidez because he's a more simple and straightforward fighter than Dimitri Bivol. Dimitri is far too nuanced, far too streamlined, too difficult, too pesky, but David...
He's basic.